Chasing China.
Ni hao and welcome back everyone to Chasing China. I'm Zara, your host and guide through the mesmerizing journey of expat life in Beijing. Whether you're a seasoned expat, considering a move, or simply curious about life in China, this podcast is here to offer you a front row seat to see what it's truly like to live, work, and thrive in Beijing. But before we dive into today's episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on the exciting and valuable insights our guests have to offer. Now, without further ado, let's get started on another adventure of Chasing China. Our next guest on Chasing China is Johan from Sweden. Since 13 years, he lives abroad. His journey started right after high school in California in the US, and when he was 24 years old, he studied a semester in South Korea. Since then, he worked in Seoul, Shanghai, Hong Kong, and now Beijing. During the weeks, he helps Swedish companies to grow in Asia, but even more important for him is his passion for fitness, health, nutrition, and traveling. He is documenting his adventures on social media platforms like Instagram and YouTube. And well, join us as we dive into Johan's experiences from his first steps in California to his current adventures in China and where he sees himself in the future. Hi, Johan. Nice to have you here today.
Hello, very fun and exciting to be here and share this story, and also in English, and it's fun also for yourself to think back of your memories, because I think it can be life-changing to do some of the things that I did, and hopefully can inspire others maybe do the same thing. So thank you for having me on.
Sure, that's great, and you will. So, I don't know if you already listened to a podcast, but I start every interview with a funny little game. I will throw out a word or phrase related to China, and you have to share the first thing that comes to your mind. You got it?
How?
Work-life balance in China.
I would say not too bad. People probably think it's worse than it is, but of course it depends on where you are, if it's in tech or more government companies or private ones. But I would say more strict 9 to 6, at least it's my experience, than maybe Sweden, and less working from home. That is not something I see here.
Absolutely. A fitness scene in Beijing.
It's quite good. I would say I had to look it up to find you and all the other peoples in Active Forever. So I have it this schedule actually every Saturday to meet people and also meet, do exercise. Otherwise, I stick to myself. So I have a gym in my own building that I go there. But I would say it's quite good. It's much easier to find other people. Even when I lived in Shanghai, someone just approached me in the street and said, like, "Oh, why don't you join us for this, fitness group or running group?" Which would never happen in Sweden, I can tell you. So on that note, much better.
Great. Biggest difference between China and Sweden?
I think people are more long-term oriented and focus on making their life and their family's life better in the future. And it's worth it to sacrifice short-term to make that happen instead of just living in the moment. For example, saving money. That kind of character comes much more natural. It's not something you have to teach or force people, I think. At least in the past, maybe it's changing. But that is a very big difference, I feel.
So it's like that in China?
Yeah, exactly. So people don't take it for granted. People know in general, I mean, it's not only China, I think it's Asia in general, that you want to make a better life for yourself and your family. You have to study hard, work hard to make it happen, and you're willing to do that for a very long time, but you still do it. You don't, get tempted to go out and maybe, buy fancy stuff or spend on food or brunches or things like that. Of course, people do that now also more, but I think in general, less of that. It's more like focusing on the future, at least it's my perception.
And maybe they don't question too many things as we do in other countries. And last but not least, grocery shopping in China, because I know you do a lot of it because you're also doing most of your meals at home.
I think it's great. In Sweden, we're a bit spoiled because we have a very, very good selection of, for example, dairy, bread, and good quality ingredients that are, from Sweden or locally sourced. So they're quite cheap, yogurt and, cheese, things like that. But I would say in China, it's still very good. First and foremost, you can order things on your phone if you want, which I guess most people probably do. But I actually like to go to the grocery store, and I go to the very local one, and I would say it has a very good selection. And compared to Sweden, it's very different because here you can pick, a piece of beef or pork or chicken, straight from the freezer, frozen. Most people in Sweden probably wouldn't dare to do it for hygiene reason, but I haven't been sick so far, 10 years in or more, knock on wood. So I think it's fun actually, but it's bit of a different adventure. But if you go to more fancy stores, of course, you have an even wider selection with a much higher price points. You can have imported coffee or like honey or whatever from all places of the world. Of course, you pay a lot more for that, but the target market for that in China is big. So there's still possible to do that in a regular store. In Sweden, people would definitely not buy honey for like 200, or 20 euros or something, which you can here. So it's a bit interesting.
Okay, interesting. Well, let's start with the interview. Your journey has taken you from California to South Korea and now to China. What initially drew you to Asia?
Yes, so if I rewind the tape a little bit, initially what drew me to Asia, actually I came to Asia in 2011 the first time, to Thailand. And Thailand is actually one of the most popular tourist destinations for Swedes because it's rather cold in Sweden, especially in the winter. People want to go somewhere, and Thailand is very popular. But I'm actually allergic to peanuts, and I heard that there's a lot of nuts in the food over here, so we never did that, which is rather unusual. So I actually came in 2011, so I was 24. Yes, and the reason I did that was because, as you mentioned in the intro, I studied in California after high school, and that opened up my eyes to the world. But then in university, I studied engineering, and on the fourth year, I got the opportunity to do an exchange. And everyone wanted to go to Australia or Singapore because it's warm, but I did the opposite. Fortunately, thanks to my dad, or maybe due to the fault of my dad, I heard that Asia was very interesting, and because he's been traveling here during his work years, and we had a few different options. It was like Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, and I heard Korea has really great food and a big tech scene, and I studied computer science. So I applied for that. So I decided to go to South Korea instead. But my friends all went to Melbourne at the same semester, so good timing. So we actually decided to do what we called Around the World in 200 days together. We even made a vlog or blog about it. So we actually started to go to Thailand. So the 8th of January 2011, I came to Bangkok for the first time. And I definitely liked it immediately. We were there a few days. Then we went to Cambodia after that. And then my friends went to Singapore. I went to Daejeon. It was minus 15 degrees and cold. So I was asking, what am I doing here? What have I done? Knowing no one. So that was what first drew me to Asia. First it was tough, but then immediately I started to meet some new exchange student friends from all over the world. Turkey, Mexico, America, everywhere, and of course Korean people. And I think maybe I should add, in Korea, at least at that time, and especially in the small city I was in, Daejeon, basically no one spoke English, so it's like body language or Korean. And fortunately I was there during my master's semester, which meant we had to study Korean. So we took a basic course in Korean, and after a while I really started liking it and also hang out more with Korean people. So basically, I fell in love with Korea and said, I need to go back here. So when the semester finished, I finished my master's degree like a year later. Actually, before I went to study, I studied two things at the same time, engineering and business at the same time, because in Sweden it's government financed. So I doubled down on that, study everything. But then I finished the business degree before Korea. So when I came back, I had all my evenings for free all of a sudden. So I decided to study Korean instead, to maximize my chances of going back. So that spring when I graduated, there was actually the World Expo in 2012 in Korea, where we arranged like a Swedish pavilion, and I applied to help out in that. But unfortunately then I had to go down in April, and I was writing my master thesis at the time, so I couldn't. But very fortunately I already met the team and had some interviews, and they mentioned later that there will be an internship opening up in the fall. So I did everything I could study for that to make that happen, which it did. But before that was decided, of course, I was graduating, and I was approached by a lot of different IT consultancies and other companies, and went to interviews, final interviews with partners and people, and talked about my journey. And one of the partners said at one of the firms, is like, based on what you're telling me, I'm not sure if this is, what you want. Do you really want to work here, or is there something else you want to pursue? I think you should go home and think about it. And I did, and I didn't go back. So I only applied for this job, even though I went to a lot of other interviews, and I got it. And that's maybe one of the happiest days in my life, when I got this offer. And then kind of my work started here. I have to say, though, I started as an intern. So compared to starting some fancy consulting job in something in Sweden, it probably took a massive pay cut, and basically had to use my life savings for like a year or more to finance it. But I think it goes back to a little bit to what I mentioned earlier, investing in your future and betting on that this is something you want to do and it will be worth it long term. So even though it was tough financially and also, of course, personally being alone over here in the beginning, definitely sort of paid off, and I don't regret it at all. It's probably one of the best decisions I've done, and I feel doing those kind of things early, especially when you come from a place like Sweden or Europe where you have a better social security net. I mean, you have quite limited risk actually, even though it feels tough. But compared to many other places in the world, it's extremely fortunate to be able to do these kind of changes and take on internships and so on. So that's how it started. That was a very long answer to your question. I don't know if you have any follow-up questions, but I happily can talk for hours, of course, about my Korea adventure or California or things like that. I can, I guess, just throw in there anyway. When I was studying in California, business, it was 1 year. I worked as an intern there actually on the side as well for like a local DJ entertainment company for free, which other people thought was very strange way to spend your weekends. But I got to go to LA and attend fancy weddings and see cool hotel venues and go to restaurants and stuff. So I think that was worth the time, but people have different views on that. And also actually at the time, as I mentioned, studied computer science in university, but in high school I was already into programming and stuff. So I actually made my own blog, coded by myself. So I started uploading things back in the day before Facebook and things even existed. For sharing. So that's how I guess the photography thing started as well, and documenting it. But I also always got the question, where are the photos of you? It's only photos of food and nature everywhere. What's the problem? So that's why there's mostly food on my social media. Occasionally a picture of me, but that's not my default mode. It's more like a food vlog. And yeah, I mean, people actually answered when I moved, or asked me when I moved to Asia, why aren't you posting on social media? Because I was not actually public at all for like 6-7 years or something. And I realized looking back, like if I want to show you something now from Seoul, I don't know where to go. I can't find it. So I realized it's not about showing how fantastic your life is to other people. It's more documenting the journey for yourself and remembering and looking back to it on 10-20 years and enjoying that.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's very interesting always to understand where people come from and why did they end up where they do. And I think you gave us a very great explanation to that. And later we will talk a little bit more about your social media appearance. But first, I really want to know, where did you like it the most so far?
It's a tough question and one I get quite often. So I think it depends on how you want to answer it. As you mentioned, I like exercise and fitness and hiking in nature. That's what I do on my social media. And for that, Hong Kong is amazing. It's tropical and very easily accessible. Of course, China is enormous. There's a lot of beautiful nature here as well. But if you take in all the perspectives that for most people you have to, such as the cost of living, Hong Kong is very high. So that is the downside. If you haven't sort of that part figured out, it can be a struggle, even though, of course, going out in nature is for free. Living there and, going to restaurants, things like that, maybe you can't really enjoy as much. And here in Shanghai, it's definitely lower. So it depends on what you want out of life. If nature is fun for you and can live very cheaply, Hong Kong is fantastic. But then obviously it depends on what you're working with, what the job market is. If you come there, sent out, or if you try to look for a job. When I moved from Shanghai to Hong Kong, obviously, as you mentioned, I work with helping companies enter the market. Hong Kong is a much smaller market than the mainland China. So that I actually struggled to make the decision for a long time, because I felt it would be a challenge at work. But it worked out. Seoul, of course, was my first love, to put it that way, when I studied in a small city and then worked in Seoul. Seoul is amazing, but to the point earlier, I didn't have so great financial situation at the time, so I definitely couldn't enjoy life as much as maybe I can do here if I want to. But yeah, they're different. So I think all are definitely worth visiting, but they're quite different also if you're a tourist, especially. Maybe there are more things to sort of take off the box and see if you come to maybe Beijing or Shanghai or Hong Kong. Seoul has maybe less of a tourist attractions, but I think then it's even more interesting and fun to explore the local culture and people, and I felt I connected more with the locals when I was there. So and of course nightlife and things like that are amazing. So it completely varies what you're looking for. They're very different. So I was actually fortunate to have some friends coming and visiting me when I lived in Shanghai, and I forced them to also go to Seoul to contrast, and like, oh, why do we have to stay so long time? Isn't one place enough? But afterwards they told me like, wow, this is like the best trip we've ever done. I'm so happy we saw both and saw the differences. So I suggest you go and check for yourself.
Absolutely. I love that answer. I think everybody has to make his own image and his own experience in a country. Also, my parents, before they visited me in China was not on their bucket list very high to come to China. And after the 2 weeks here, they loved it. It was very surprising because at the end, what you see in media or in movies is just a different thing than you experience it by yourself. And coming back to Hong Kong, yes, I was very surprised about the cost of living there because I think we went out to have pizza. We just ordered 2 pizza, no beverage, and we spent almost $50. So it was pretty expensive, but as you said, a beautiful city, and I think more beautiful nature than compared to Beijing and the surroundings. But yeah, you already mentioned your company and some challenges you had facing the work in Hong Kong. So as someone who assists Swedish companies expanding their presence in Asia, what are some of the challenges you've encountered?
So I guess the challenges are maybe not so much my challenges, but rather the challenges of companies wanting to enter China or any market, I would say. I work not only with China, but advising companies on Asia or global strategy as a whole, and maybe the advice is don't come to China. So I think for any company, it's about understanding a few different factors, and of course there are many different business frameworks and things, and I can talk about this for hours probably. But if you start with just the market, is there a market for your product, or are you too early or maybe too late? Because I think the key or short answer is there a product market fit for the market? So is there a need for this type of product? Does it exist already? And if so, does it have an attractive value proposition and price point? Because just assuming that you are, from Sweden or Europe or the Western world coming with a product that someone wants to buy it is, then you're in for a bit of an awakening, I think. So understanding that first, but then obviously there is local competition, for example, or the whole world's competition. I would say China is a massive market, often the biggest or the second biggest in the world, regardless of industry. So understand what's the competitive landscape, local competition, international competition, how are they priced, see if you have room, and then obviously sales channels. If we talk about, for an example, consumer companies selling online in China or through social media, it's a completely different landscape. I would say it's very fascinating, working with live streamers and all of this, because China is so far ahead, because obviously it's a very big market. So companies can invest more to get sort of a future upside, which means it's worth investing in and it's more developed. I think it's super interesting. So understanding that, but then obviously also like regulation, for an example, and how much it actually costs if you do a business case entering the Chinese market. I mean, just comparing to Sweden is 10 million people. China is 1.5 billion. So it's like 140, 150 times bigger in theory. Which means maybe you have to spend 150 times more than you have building it up in Sweden. And that maybe is not what they expect. They just want to find a partner who fixes everything. It's like, okay, but what's in it for them investing that? And being a bit, you have to be business-minded, obviously. Some people or companies are maybe a bit opportunistic. So I think just China is very important. You have to think of it strategically. So, I mean, if you don't come from maybe a business background or studied MBA or something, maybe you haven't been forced to think of it that way, but I think China is a place, or Asia markets far away are very different. So you should do your homework, basically. That I think is the one key struggle, maybe compared to just going to Denmark or Finland or something.
Yeah, I think preparation is always the key and the most important part because I worked in procurement, and preparing for the negotiation is the biggest part than actually your performance in the negotiation. And I think it's very similar to your work. But now I'm very interested. I have 2 questions. Maybe you could give us a few little examples. What kind of companies with what kind of products do want to enter the Asian market? Like, is it more food or technological products? And the second question is, you mentioned you also have to check if it's too early maybe or too late to enter the market. Would you say, because my experience is that China is getting ahead of a lot of countries, is it mostly that companies enter too late into the Chinese market? So these two questions.
So the first question was what companies want to enter the Chinese market, and I think many of the one. I'm not sure if one thing is the same as that the companies should be here, because I think many look at China. If you talk about consumer companies, I think it's 1.4 billion people or something, get 1%. Wow, it's massive. So maybe consumer companies are sometimes a bit naive. So they want to come here, but if you talk about that, I mean, if you want to sell, vitamin supplements or, facial treatment or something, as mentioned, there is a huge pool of competition. So you need to have something unique, patented or some sort of innovation. I mean, there are different supplements, for example, or something that has a special formulation where you can actually show, maybe clinically, that it is different, because otherwise it's very hard. But even if you do have that, then obviously you have to educate the consumers. I mean, do marketing basically in a way that's allowed, depending on if you have registered your product or if it's cross-border to do that. So that's one type of companies who typically think about China, but the ones that maybe more strategically want to come here, if you talk about a completely different industry, could be, for example, automotive, because China has more than 100 automotive OEMs spread around the country, and they're very far ahead, as you know, in new electrical vehicles, looking batteries, but also like hydrogen, a lot of future technology, autonomous driving. So if you come from a country or work for a company that sell to other OEMs, obviously, I mean, in your home country, maybe you have a few, if even that, but China has 100. So the potential market for that, at least on paper, is massive. But then the question is, do you have a product that's the right for them, right price point, and do you have even the local, presence in terms of the team and so on to be able to offer that, even though it sounds interesting? So I think those are two examples. So food and supplements, basically consumer products in general, and then more industrial. Then you have, of course, the whole green transition. Sustainability is, more and more important, reducing carbon emissions. And obviously China has a very big population that is getting older. So life science, healthcare sector, new types of drugs, treatment, medical devices, treatments for an increasingly elderly population. Not only in China, Japan, Korea, and other places as well as Singapore, Hong Kong. So those are some of the areas, at least, that I see.
Great, thank you. And just a little fun fact, what I learned at work, I have to be not specific on the numbers, but I think we have more than 1,500 automotive companies that just opened the last years here in China, but just 100 of them actually sold cars. It was a very interesting fact. But coming back to the second question, do you think, you can talk about Swedish companies, do you think they are often late to enter the market?
It depends. I think maybe compared to other countries, companies are more proactive, so they're not as late as maybe companies from other countries. And the reason is basically that Sweden is very small. So many companies in Sweden, if you have a population of 10 million people and one or two car manufacturers or 10 million people that potentially can be sick, of course, it's a very small market. So many Swedish companies are very internationalized or have been forced to very early. Some of the big ones have been in China, 100 years. Because especially if you're on the stock market, your owners want you to increase your profit, and then that means you need to increase your revenue. Where do you find that? Yeah, in other markets or segments, which means they have been, of course, pushed by the owners forever to grow. So they aren't. So they've been forced to be early, basically, investigating new options and markets. So it depends. Then, on the other hand, maybe the perception of China has been less of a developed country earlier. The people that have done business with China has been aware for a very long time of that it's ultra modern and at the forefront. But if you haven't, maybe you have a different picture. So I think the ones sort of in the business have probably been aware of it for a long time. So they've been forced to be early. So I think it depends, if you're an individual not working with China versus a professional working in a particular field. So it's more maybe that you are aware of the opportunity early, but you are not mature or big enough to be able to tackle it. And then when you get there, then maybe it's too late. I think it's maybe that could be more the scenario, actually, unfortunately.
Yeah, I understand. Well, we talked a lot about your work, but I already mentioned your passion for fitness, health, and nutrition. So when did this started and what motivated you to share this part of your life?
Okay, so firstly, actually, when I was growing up, I was definitely not into fitness at all, I would say. At least team sports. I mean, football, soccer, ice hockey, all this stuff. You have to do it in school in PE class, but I never enjoyed it. What I did do quite a lot was running more, because my family was doing that. I did some small races and things, nothing advanced. But then also when I was in Shanghai, actually in the morning, I started running in the mornings. But in Hong Kong, what motivated me to start? I mean, I, for some reason, started to look into more fitness on YouTube, consume fitness content 5 years ago. And then I started with that. I got like a scale and started to track things and learn more about nutrition. Because basically up until this point, I never cooked my whole life. Because in Asia, you can eat out very cheaply. So I started cooking to, because I saw the results changing, in your body. And I realized that, wow, I've been eating, completely wrong my whole life. And it's not just random. It's actually, what you put in affects the output, so to speak. And I'm an engineer, and that really intrigued me. And then I was on a boat trip in Hong Kong, because it's quite common that you have small boat parties with friends. And one of my friends in the spring or in the winter, maybe it was, because it's still quite warm in winter, he said, wow, it would be really cool to be in shape for the summer, to be beach fit. And I was like, okay, let's make a bet, let's make it happen. 1st of May, let's do it. And we did. I did not succeed. I succeeded on some levels, I would say. And then I just realized that it's all about the process. And I got kind of addicted or hooked on that process to see you can improve your body and your mind. You feel much better by living a healthier lifestyle and exercise. And it's like progress. You get addicted to progress. I mean, maybe you don't like the word bodybuilding, but it's about building up your body or your mind. I mean, regardless of if it's in work or financial life or fitness or sports or whatever, it's just fun to get better at something. And you see that it's not you put in the effort. I mean, you don't see it as like a punishment being in the gym 1 hour. It's like one step closer to something bigger. And I think that is really fun. And then you can, you track it, which I do with everything because I'm a bit crazy. But in Excel, the weights in the gym and a lot of things. And then it's more like a game just with yourself. And the good thing is also, even if you take a break or something, it's, still sticks with you. One thing is maybe running and things, stamina doesn't really stay with you for as long. But physical fitness and muscle mass and things like that really improves a lot of things in your life and posture and everything. So that is what got me into it. And then I was just addicted to that continuous journey, maybe a bit too much, but yeah, it's something I look forward to. Yesterday I joined up a group here where I actually met you a few months ago every Saturday morning, because you meet also friends and like-minded people, and I think other people that have a shared interest typically have a lot of other interesting stories as well, and that's why I'm here. So I mean, I guess that's one thing leads to another. Always say yes first and try it out. So basically only good things have come out for it, I think, so far. So very long answer to a short question.
No, that was a great answer. And yes, for the listeners, maybe we met on such a fitness event. We did a workout together, and it's always fun to do it in a group. But I really also like to do sports for myself. I think the balance between sharing this passion and connecting with people, but also maybe calming down your mind and take care of yourself is a very great thing. I think the biggest issue a lot of people have is also when they use their words, because I think using the right words change a lot also in your mind. And a lot of people think, I have to do sports, or I have to go to the gym and I have to do that, but I don't want to. But I think when you change your words and you say, I want to go there, and you're concentrating on the results, on the feeling you have afterwards, then I think more people would really enjoy doing it. And I think you can be very happy that you found this passion for yourself. But you also have another passion, sharing your travel experiences on YouTube. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure, but before I jump into the traveling adventures, maybe I should have mentioned, like you say, to enjoy the process of exercising is very important. I mean, right now it's 10 in the morning, but I'm already looking forward to my gym session, which I didn't have this morning because I was up editing my videos, actually, that I will get to soon. Before this, then I came here, and then later I will do exercise. And it's not something I dread. I really look forward to going there. But on the topic of travels, as I mentioned a bit earlier, I've lived, I guess, unusually long abroad. It's like 13 years or something in the making so far. And it's when people ask, what are you doing? What have you done? It's a bit sad to not be able to give an answer. Or it's like, okay, how much time do you have? But if you can just send them a YouTube video that they can watch in 4 minutes and get like, wow, that looks incredible. It's like, yeah, especially if people have limited perception of what maybe China looks like, or like you said, Hong Kong. Maybe people think Hong Kong is a concrete jungle with the skyscrapers, and I can tell you it's a lot more than that. It's amazing food, but secondly, the nature is incredible, and people see the videos I show because I have a drone, which I think is fun to share. People are like, what is this, Hong Kong? This looks like Thailand, So I think it's just fun to kind of prove people wrong in a way, or open their eyes. And I think, basically a picture says more than 1,000 words, as they say. So, and as when I was in the US, 2006, I bought my first camera as a gift camera to myself, because I was going for Thanksgiving to Las Vegas, and of course that's a place I heard many things about, and I wanted to document it on my own site. And then I did that. Then didn't post much for a long time, but then as a graduation gift for myself, when I graduated university, I bought myself a very fancy camera because I thought I need to document my journey in Korea, which I did, but I didn't share it anywhere. At the time, Facebook was a bit popular, so a little bit there, but not too much, I would say. I compiled an album sort of when I left, but not along the way. And I really regret it. And I think that the struggle is, if you do that, you have to kind of sit down one day and look through 10,000 photos and pick 10, which is essentially the same as editing. You film a lot of things, and it takes a lot of mental effort and discipline to actually do that. And if you don't do it, you don't have it compiled. So I just realized it's more fun to do it along the way. So I actually got Instagram first, by mistake actually, because I had a friend visiting Hong Kong, living there for like a month or something, and somehow I clicked something on Facebook, and all of a sudden I had Instagram. And then apparently other people get notified that you do, and then all of a sudden people added me on Instagram, but I didn't even have a single photo. So I thought, well, I guess it's a sign I need to put up things. So I started sharing on that, and of course got a lot of positive feedback mostly. But then when I knew I was going to move on from Hong Kong, I decided I want to document the things I really like about Hong Kong. So I started to do mostly drone videos at the time, and post on YouTube. So I was not in the videos. I was talking a little bit, but I was never in front of the camera. But then when I moved up to Beijing, it was during the COVID times. It was restricted with movement. But I decided one day that or actually someone commented on my video, said like, I'd like to follow you, but I don't want to follow someone without a face. And that got me thinking, like, okay, maybe it's sort of worth the sacrifice on my side, showing myself, I put it that way, if you're a bit scared of that. But to be able to share it with more people is sort of more valuable to the world and myself, and more fun. So I decided to just step in front of the camera, and I never looked back, and it's really fun. And I think also, on a similar topic, perhaps people maybe are worried about being on camera or writing on LinkedIn or whatever, or public speaking. I think just doing it is the first step, and then you just get better every time. It's not going to be perfect, but practice makes perfect, or at least get closer to perfection. So if you've done it one time, it's tough. If you've done it 1,000 times, it doesn't even feel like anything. I mean, it's the same as going to the gym, or having sales meetings or whatever. In the beginning it's tough, but you get better at it. So it's kind of practice. So then I basically just started documenting my journeys in Beijing first, but then also during my travels, because you never know when the story ends, and I wanted to make sure I have something to look back on. And it's been a lot. And then I found some friends that I travel with that also liked the same thing, so it wasn't really a hassle. So I started posting first on Instagram basically, but then doing more videos, because I felt it's very hard to pick. If you go on a trip for a week and you have to pick one photo or 5 photos on Instagram, it's very hard. But if you make a video, you can kind of make it a bit more compelling and lively, especially with the sound. You can like feel and get the vibe a bit more. So of course it takes a lot more time to do video, but I think it's fun. And also like kind of quality, having longer videos rather than short sort of reels and things like that on Instagram. So I enjoy it, and I really like. This morning I was up 3 hours editing a video before this, and I'm gonna go back after gym and continue to finish it. But it's nothing I suffer from doing. I think it's really fun. It takes a lot of time, but I've never regretted looking back on a video and thinking, oh, I wasted 10 hours doing this. It's like, no, wow, this was... I'm really happy, especially when I go back to Sweden with my family, to look at it together and like tell them all the side stories and things, which wouldn't be possible otherwise. So once again, a long answer, but that's how it started.
That sounds great. And I think you had the right motivation. Why you started it was to share your experience, to look back. And I think also a YouTube channel can be like a little diary, right? The same as I'm doing with my podcast. It's to look back, make memories and save them, right? So I love that. And you already picked up a little bit on my next question. I imagine there are many people who are thinking about starting a YouTube channel or something similar, but often are hesitant or not sure about what and how, and also thinking about other people's opinion. So what can you tell these people?
I mean, I think step one is to think of why do you want to do it and what is motivating you. One thing is if you're sort of pressured into do something, for example, at work, you have to give a speech or something and you're super uncomfortable. That can be tough, but then you have to just prepare or practice. But then you can, I think it's always important to have a goal, look into the future. What will this get me to in the future? Maybe you also want to be good at speaking because you like to be able to go to a wedding and give a good speech without, being super nervous, for example. Maybe this could be your first step and you see it as one step closer to the journey. And also, I think if you think of it, I mean, it depends on, there are some, of course, personal incentives. For example, at work, if you're good at communicating in general, regardless if it's on a video or speaking or in meetings, you become more valuable, so you make more money, maybe in the future. Not for sure, but that could be, of course, like a personal motivation. But if you talk about private side of things, sharing on YouTube or things like that, I think, why do you care about other people in that way? They're not, you're not trying to impress them. And actually for myself, I mean, one hack, if I put it that way, is when I started with my Instagram, for example, I created a new Instagram with 0 followers and none of my old friends. So the only ones who follow me there are the ones who are interested in what I do. So there is some sort of crossover of people that get annoyed or think like, I don't care about your food or your travels. Like they're not on there. And people can always, unfollow or unsubscribe. You're not forcing them to follow you, right? Then later maybe it becomes a game of how do you get new followers and things, but that's a different story. So same for YouTube. I mean, if you don't tell anyone and you just upload, I mean, no one will know. And even if they one day find out, I mean, they're probably just going to be, sort of jealous of you daring to do it. But I mean, hopefully you don't really, it shouldn't affect why you do it. You should think it's fun. I think if you should think maybe starting to think of like, what do I know or what perspectives do I have that maybe other people could be interested in learning about? And you don't have to do fancy edits or things. You can just sit down and record yourself because you've been through some personal experience or something happened, or you just like me, like to share travel journeys because you want to inspire other people to go and do it, even if they don't have the capability or money to do it. So think of like, what do I have maybe in my current life or in my past that I think is interesting for myself and other people to talk about, because then it feels natural. You don't have to sort of prepare maybe like this script and plan all these things. Like basically start, don't overthink it. That is step number one. And then like, don't do it for the fame or whatever. Like it should feel good and fun to do, even if no one will ever see it. And even if you do see it, you're still happy that you did it, because otherwise you're probably doing it for the wrong reasons. And if you really want to get into it as a career, I mean, for me, it's just a hobby. I haven't made a single dollar from any of the things I do on social media. I mean, if that is your goal, I don't think it's a good way to start. But also, you have to be able to really push through many years, maybe, before you get any progress. And if you don't like it, you're never going to stick with it. So I mean, it's not only video or social media; it's anything in life. I think you need to like something to be able to do it long term. So start with something you like and enjoy, and then maybe in the future it can be something big. But just start small and see what happens.
Absolutely. I love that. And I know it's important to have goals. No question to that. But I think the most important thing is to find your why. Why do I want to do this? And that was the same with my podcast. I know that with a podcast about China, which is a niche, not everybody is interested in China. And with podcast episodes that are as long as almost an hour, I know I will not reach millions of people because not everybody's interested in that. And that was always okay for me. I know I will not earn money with that, but I want to share my experience. I want to look back and listen to it, and because I just enjoy what I'm doing. I find it's interesting, and that you also mentioned what is interesting for others, but what is always also interesting for you, because if you don't like what you're doing, how can you expect from others to like it? So I really liked what you said. But let's move on maybe to another topic. You lived in various Asian cities, and that must have provided you with a wealth of experiences. Could you share maybe a memorable moment or encounter that has really left a lasting impact on you?
Well, I touched upon it, I think, before. Obviously, there are many examples, but I think back of that moment when I arrived in Korea for the first time. I mean, because basically compared to California, everyone it sounds great and it's warm and everything. But Korea, I didn't know so much about, and other people didn't either. I came here, it was like minus 15 degrees. I was by myself. It was January. It was in a small city. There were like no one there because I was early in the semester, and I really thought like, what am I doing here? Like all my friends are Singapore, Australia, in the warm, enjoying life. I'm here, and it's it's not going to be fun basically. But then obviously later on I made it fantastic. But that's like a mindset shift, I think, because you start, or at least I don't know, me coming from Sweden, maybe I was a bit pessimistic or negative in a way, or cynical. If you look for problems, you will obviously find them. But if you start looking for interesting, positive things, you will hopefully see more of that, and then the downside sort of is less. So I kind of felt my mindset shift changing through that semester from, seeing it's like, wow, this is a challenge. It's, it's tough, to eventually being like, I don't want to leave. This is amazing. I love it here. The people, the culture, the food, everything, my friends. So that transformation maybe on my mindset myself, and really, appreciating the good things instead of the negative things, and how that changed from cold winter to very hot summer in a way. Then obviously there are many other things, but I think that from a life transformation perspective perhaps opened my eyes. I mean, so much that I wanted to come back, which I did.
Yeah, that's great. And coming back to China, what do you think are some misconceptions that people might have about living and working in China? Because I guess there are a lot.
Yeah, I think most people don't know so much, and what they do know, it's only what they've seen or heard in the media, and unfortunately I think it's a quite negative touch to it often. There's seldom you see something positive, I would say, and especially not about the culture. It's normally sort of politics or business maybe, but very little about the everyday people and the beautiful nature and the food. And I think the food, especially now, maybe not everyone is super much into that, but if you like food, you have so many different provinces and regions with unique different types of cuisines and foods that are basically impossible to find in many other places. Maybe some parts of Asia or Chinatowns, but if you come from Stockholm or Europe, for where I'm from, if you find Chinese restaurants, very limited. So I think that really positive side of things, normally when you have people coming over, they're surprised or very positively impressed by how good that is. Then of course maybe how well developed it is, I would say. Once again, not only China, many parts maybe of Asia, but it's super modern. You can travel around China, fantastically easy and cheap. I mean, I'm going to Shanghai next weekend, and I think it was one flight every 20 minutes the whole day. It's like taking the bus, and they're all full. So a very well invested and developed infrastructure. Then, of course, the language barrier is tough. That's different. So if you can speak a little bit of Mandarin, that is good. Otherwise, it can be hard to get around. But it's very digitalized here, so you can buy everything and book everything online, basically. So I would say more digitalized and developed than maybe what many people think. A really interesting culture, of course. And then on the business side of things, once again, very developed, and they're very well ahead in many areas, which people maybe don't know unless you work in that industry in a sense. Then of course people are very friendly. People are people. People are friendly in most places I've ever been to. So I don't know why you would think otherwise. But in general, people are very happy to see you. And of course, if you go to smaller cities, there aren't so many foreigners. I was with my parents traveling around China, small cities, and then people always want to take photos and things with you, which is quite uncommon or strange maybe if you're in Sweden, for an example. But here it's very normal, and it's sort of a positive thing and I think you should embrace that. That's maybe different and awkward, and it's like, I don't want to meet people's photos, but once you shift your mindset, it's just like, wow, it's fun that they think it's fun you are visiting their country, and they want to show by appreciation by taking a photo with you. Like, if you think of it that way, it's a bit different. So definitely, if you haven't been to China, I invite you to come and see for yourself. And I think, obviously, you have Shanghai and Beijing, massive cities, Shenzhen. They're good if you have short time. But if you can, I would go sort of to the central or western parts of China. I've been to many different provinces, as you maybe can see in some of my videos, Xinjiang, Yunnan, Guangxi, Guizhou, a lot of places, which is amazing. So if you have a little bit more time, I recommend to do that. But otherwise, Shanghai and Beijing also has a lot of interesting things to offer.
Absolutely. But if people decide now to come to China and visit you, they won't find you. So I know your chapter here is ending. So tell us, where are you heading? What are your aspirations for the future?
Yes, I'm actually going to go home and pack down my boxes later today. Unfortunately, I am not a man of many things, so I don't have too much to pack down. I still haven't really packed up most of my things from Hong Kong, actually, even though I've been here almost 4 years. But the next chapter is not in China, that is correct. So I got the opportunity to move to another country, still in Asia, but still 4 hours away, which is the Philippines and Manila. And interestingly enough, I have never been there. I'm going there to visit for the first time in 3 weeks, so I hope I don't regret my choice. But I think so far everything, most things in my life that have been big decisions have been good ones, and I've never regretted it. So I'm sure it will be tough leaving, but it's not goodbye. You can jump on a flight and come back, and I see it as an amazing, interesting opportunity, of course, to develop as a person and get to know new people, and obviously developing what I'm doing as well on a professional level. So I choose to see it as an amazing opportunity, not something that I have to do leaving China. But of course, I've been here for 12 years soon, or 11, and then Korea before that. So it's a long time, and it's a big part of my identity, I would say. I'm like the China guy or something when people talk to me back home. Now I will be something else, but still staying in the region, really looking forward to that. So if you're coming past Manila later on, let me know, or otherwise the Philippines, and maybe we can meet up on an island or something.
That's great. And it gives you the opportunity to upload new YouTube videos and travel experiences. So people, stay tuned. I will mention everything in the description box. But we are getting to the end. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your thoughts. Before we say goodbye, I have one final question I'll ask everybody on this podcast. So if, after your time in China, which arrived now, you were to return to your home country or another place where you're going now, what aspect, habit, or behavior will you bring with you?
It's a good question, but I think just the appreciation for Chinese cuisine is one thing that comes to mind. People that follow me on Instagram think maybe I cook very Asian fusion cooking. I love spicy food, so I will definitely bring that spiciness to my cuisine and my future friends or family in Sweden with me. But I think just in general, maybe more a positive mindset, sort of the best is yet to come. It's a big world out there, and being optimistic about the future maybe is something I will definitely bring with me. So the cuisine, the optimism, and of course a lot of good memories. And I think I will always talk positive things about China, so hopefully I can bring with me that so that others can go and visit China in the future as well. Then obviously a lot of friendships and memories for the life going forward. So yeah, those are just some basic things that come to mind.
That's amazing. I love it. And nobody else said before he will bring memories, but that's kind of the sense of everything, right? We make memories wherever we are and take them with us. So that's amazing. I'm so thankful that you came here today, and hopefully see you soon again.
Thank you so much. And also, of course, to you, huge congratulations and good luck for your next chapter in your life that I'm sure will be very exciting as well. So looking forward to hearing all the future episodes as well, where you maybe talk more about your journey.
Thank you so much. Once again, thanks for joining Chasing China. Subscribe to stay updated and stay tuned for more adventures. Until then, 再见 and happy chasing! I want to remind you that everything shared on this podcast is based on my own opinions, experiences, and perspectives. I don't want to judge or impose my views on anyone. Every journey is unique, and I appreciate you being a part of mine. Thanks again, and see you next time. Take care!